The place, the island of Crete. The time, approximately 1500 BC. Hey Sun, stay sun. I'm Daisy Viktoria, and today I'm going to take you with me on a journey as we appreciate and explore an ancient civilization that is long gone, a civilization that's full of mystery and intrigue, a civilization that has left behind just enough remnants for us to really get curious about them. The Minoan civilization existed on the island of Crete in the Aegean Sea from around 3500 BCE to around 1100 BCE. Now, the term Minoan is actually a modern term that we use to describe the civilization. It is not what they called themselves. In fact, it comes from the Greek legend of King Minos. That legend of King Minos and the famous bull in the labyrinth matches up with what was discovered on the island of Crete, and so when Sir Arthur Evans, a British archaeologist, discovered this civilization in the early 1900s, he called them the Minoans. A name that is much more likely that this civilization may have called themselves is the Keftiu. We know the term Keftiu because it was found in an Egyptian tomb of Rekhmire. This is an 18th dynasty ancient Egyptian tomb. There are other tombs that also depict the same people. These people are typically depicted carrying goods, and we know that there was a lot of trade that happened between Egypt and Crete at this time. So while I will continue to refer to the civilization as the Minoans because that is what we know them as, I also like to personally call them the Keftiu. And if later I find out another name that they actually used, I'll use that one too. While we are here to explore making an outfit, I want to give you just a little bit of backstory on who the Minoans were. Minoan civilization is typically divided up into several periods. First, we have the pre-palatial period, which is from 3500 to 1900 BC. This is a time when civilization started to emerge, and we start to see these people mastering seafaring and farming. The next period is called the proto-palatial period. This lasts from about 1900 to 1750 BC. This is characterized by the time when the Minoans started to really master trade routes and began to build their palaces. Then we get into what leaves us the most famous ruins, and that is the palatial period. And typically, I see the palatial period labeled as about 1750 to 1500 BC. And this is when we see these big palaces come up. So the Palace of Knossos that everyone kind of knows, and I'm even wearing a shirt that is inspired by paintings at the Palace of Knossos. As the Minoans were building palaces on Crete and nearby the island of Thera, their power really reached its height, as far as we can tell from the archaeological record anyway. And when a society becomes powerful, others might want to come in and take from them. So this ushered in a phase when you had invaders coming from mainland Greece. And this is when we start to see the Mycenaeans really integrate with the Minoans as they are invading the islands. So another period that I see referenced is the post-palatial period. This is from 1500 to 1100 BC, and this is really when the Minoan civilization starts to decline or at least give way to a new civilization where the Mycenaeans have come in and conquered. In fact, the Mycenaeans came in around 1450 BC and conquered Crete. Now, another thing that we think led to the decline of the civilization was an eruption on the island of Thera. The eruption is supposed to have occurred around 1600 to 1450 BC, but I've seen in some accounts that exact date has been revised over time as we've gained a little more knowledge about it. And finally, another thing we see that seems to have led to their decline is the invasion of the Sea People in the 1300s. We still don't really know exactly who the Sea People were, but given that we're dealing with a society that is based in the Aegean Sea and living on islands, they definitely had people coming from the sea from many locations, even just in their regular trade routes. So unfortunately, I hate to burst your bubble, we don't actually know that much about the Minoans. Two scripts have been discovered, Linear A and Linear B. Linear B has been deciphered, and in fact it has been determined that Linear B originates from the Greeks who invaded the islands later. Linear A is thought to be an actual Minoan script, but it is undeciphered, and so we cannot, at this time, actually read what little written records we have from this civilization. If you're seeing this video sometime in the future and it has been deciphered, please let everyone know down below where to go for that information. I will be definitely looking for it myself as well. What we do have that shows us a glimpse into Minoan civilization is their surviving artwork and all of their elaborate palace structures. Minoans were pretty advanced. We tend to think of ancient people as being very primitive, and it's really not true. For example, I think it's really impressive that Minoans had indoor plumbing. They were really a smart society, and I think maybe that's part of why they're so interesting. I think that when we have a lost society that had all this knowledge, we wonder, what other knowledge did they have, and what are we missing? We might never know. What we do know is that there are some frescoes, wall paintings, statues, jewelry with inlays that depict Minoan costume. And that's what we're here to look at today. Now, it's important to note that when we are looking at a lot of the paintings, the frescoes, these were touched up in the Victorian era. So if you just Google Minoan frescoes, you're going to see the touched up versions. They definitely have the original Minoan painting, but they are filled in. So while we like to fully trust them, we need to just keep that in mind. And it's totally fine to go off of that because that's what we have, right? But I'm just kind of giving you all the information that I have. The jewelry that we find with inlays is less touched up, so that also kind of helps us to fill in the gaps. So it's really by taking all of the sources into account that we can do our best to draw what conclusions we can, and we can use our own creativity to try to interpret the past and play with it, have fun with it, and see what we can come up with. And sometimes that can lead us to a better understanding of the people who walked this earth before we did. It's hard to mention Minoan clothing without mentioning archaeologist Bernice Jones. She dedicated so much of her work to studying and recreating the clothing of this civilization and doing so much experimental archaeology to try to figure out what it might have looked like and how it might have worked. We sadly lost Bernice last year, but before we lost her, I was able to attend one of her lectures, and it was really, really cool. She did so much work and she shared so much with us. And while we're all kind of guessing a little bit, because she was able to devote so much time and energy into this, she leaves behind a legacy that we can all benefit from. Now, I've made some Minoan outfits before. In fact, I have a prior Minoan video, which you can watch if you'd like to see me make those outfits. They're going to be very similar to the one I'm making today, but not quite the same. So you could still use my tutorial, by the way, if you want a PDF tutorial to help take you through the steps of creating an ancient Minoan outfit. I do have that available, and I will link it in the description. That one is exactly the outfits that I did in the prior video. So here I'll kind of show you what I did a little bit different. So it's still the same tutorial, I just did a couple of little things I'll show you. In the other Minoan video, I also made male costumes. Today I'm just making one for me. So if you want to see some male outfits, they're also in that video. So today I am making a special outfit that's going to be really fancy. I'm probably taking some liberties on the actual trims, but I'm just kind of going for the overall look right here. I was inspired by a sari fabric, and I thought it would be really perfect for a Minoan outfit. So my inspiration is a silk sari, some more fabric that I had on hand to match it, and the many depictions we have of ancient Minoan women. I'm going to go ahead and insert some images I already edited into the old video to show you kind of the general what these outfits looked like. It's typically a tunic that we see open in the front and a skirt that is wrapped around and belted. Pretty simple, right? There may be all kinds of variations. We don't really know. All we know is the limited evidence that we have. So I'm going to go off of that and create a new Minoan outfit that's kind of fancy and really fun. The tunic, or hainos, is made from a piece in the front and a piece in the back. I'm using this red linen fabric. I think it's actually linen blend, but I had it on hand. For the front, to get that deep V neckline, I cut out a little bit of the fabric. So unlike my prior hainos, this one is just a single piece with a cutout, so it's not actually cut down the center front. My fabric wasn't quite wide enough for the sleeves, so I'm just piecing a little bit more onto the end of the sleeves here to get the length I want. So you can see what that looks like with the neckline cut out. I did a rolled hem on my serger to finish off that edge. Many of the tunics in the Minoan artwork have some sort of trim along the front edge. Here I'm using a really wide trim. This is really going for fancy and extravagant. This is a trim I found on Amazon. And unlike my other tunics that I did in the last video, for this one I'm just putting the trim to the end of that neckline opening because none of it is going to show underneath my skirt anyway, and I don't plan to wear this one alone, whereas the other ones I made full length and in a manner that I might be able to wear them alone as well. So this one is just going to go underneath the skirt. Now in Minoan artwork, red is a common color that we see, as is gold. These are typical kind of primary colors of the ancient world, easy to achieve in pigments. Though it's hard to say for sure if this trim is exactly right, it's definitely in the spirit of the Minoan trims, especially if we're going for super fancy. So this hainos is the same pattern as what's in my tutorial, except I did make it a little bit shorter and I did not cut it down the front. I just cut out that V portion. Now when I sew this together, I attach the front to the back at the top or the shoulders and also at the side seams. Now the order of operations for this is that you want to sew the shoulder seams first, and then you can lay it out flat like I have it here, and then you can attach the trim across that seam line up there. Now before, I did 2 layers of trim and went fully across the edges of the seam. This time I'm doing the 1 layer of trim because it's a very wide trim and really it only needs the 1 row. Next, I'm applying trim along the sleeves, which I've also hemmed using the rolled hem on my serger. That is my current favorite hem method, in case you're wondering. It does change over time. I'm in a phase. The reason I did this first here before sewing the side seams is so that I can now encase this trim in the side seams. So it'll be a nice, easily finished off seam. So another note is that in the other one, I finished the seams so that they were on the outside and then covered them with trim so there were no raw edges. This time I went ahead and just sewed the tunic regular, so I do have raw edges on the inside. They are finished on the serger, but the trim doesn't cover up the raw edges, it's just applied on the outside. So both ways are completely fine methods to create this style of tunic. So once the trim is applied to the top, so the shoulder seam there, and the hems of the sleeves, it's time to do the side seams. These are just plain old seams right up the side and into the sleeve. And this time I did not apply trim to the outside of the side seam. I mean, I could have, right? It would have been really, really extra fancy and sparkly and snazzy. But not all Minoan tunics have trim there. Some do, some don't, and I just thought that this trim wasn't really a good choice to put there. So these side seams are plain. And finally, tassels, because we see so many tassels in the Minoan clothing. Now the tassels in Minoan clothing might actually be part of the weaving from when the fabric is created, but no matter what it actually was, we don't exactly know. The tassels definitely give us the look that we're going for, so we're gonna tassel it up. And here you can see what this looks like when it's laid out flat. And here's my skirt. It's really just a big rectangle. So before I shaped my rectangle to make the other skirts, this time I just did a straight up rectangle. It's just a piece of sari. I used the end with the pala, which has the fringe, and then I sewed more fringe on, and the fringe is all from Amazon. The skirt is worn as a wrap skirt, so I put on the hainos or the tunic, and then I just wrap the skirt around and I tie it on with a little rope belt. The jewelry is all stuff that I think kind of goes with the themes of the portraits. The diadem is actually based on technically more later period Greek diadems, and it's made by an Etsy seller. The bigger necklace is in the spirit of the Minoan necklaces. It's a little bit on the larger side, and I did that on purpose because in the same time period you see the Egyptians, and the Minoans trade with the Egyptians, and I also do a lot of Egyptian costuming, and I thought that it might be kind of a nice middle ground where like it's kind of a Minoan necklace, but it could kind of be an Egyptian necklace too. So, I just like it. And then the earrings are also something that I think looks kind of like the hoops that they are wearing in the paintings. And finally, I decided to add snakes because we all know the snake goddess and we love the snakes. I wasn't totally sure if I was gonna love this color combo on me because I don't typically wear yellows or this type of red. I typically wear the blue reds and not the yellow reds. But when I put it on with the makeup and everything, I decided I actually love it because I wanted to have modesty options for my hainos, depending on what type of event I'm at, what I'm doing. I added a tie to the front center. So when I wore it to an event, I had it tied all the way shut. That was for a little bit more modesty and control at the event. And then when I did a photo shoot on my own later, I tied it a little bit looser. So this is a good solution if you want to have a little bit of variability or just even something to hold the top more closed and keep it wherever you want it. So what we're doing here is we're looking at ancient Minoan clothing, and we're trying to recreate something that it might have looked like. So we're kind of getting an idea of what an ancient Minoan woman, in this case a very high class one, would have looked like. And because I'm wearing this outfit to events, I'm also creating it in a way that works for me, a way that's comfortable, and a way that I can easily feel like my best self when I wear it. Because how could you not feel like your best self if you are an ancient Minoan? I mean, come on, what's better? Thank you so much for joining me here today. I love learning about the Minoans, or the Keftiu people, and I'm so excited to continue this learning journey and continue trying out new things and getting more in touch with a civilization that I personally feel connected to for some reason. And you know what? Sometimes we just feel connected to something from the past, and maybe we can't quite describe it, but why not embrace it? I look forward to sharing much more of my work with you. You can find me on all the social medias as Daisy Viktoria. My website is daisyviktoria.com. And thank you so much to my patrons over on Patreon who help enable this kind of content. I hope you all have an absolutely magical day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.